my name is Megan, and this is Everything Lit. And today, we've got a new addition to the crew. We've got a little Kaiba here. Just bought him because we're in another Yu-Gi-Oh phase. Let's go. Anyway, let's talk about books, which you're actually here for. April was a bit of a rough month with reading and just some, lows and some highs. I'm going to talk about the books I read in the order I read them. We'll go on my journey of a reading slump. And then I will mention the prompts that I fulfilled for the Magical Readathon. I did manage to get all my prompts for Moon Warden, so we are doing great there. I missed one for Master of the Elements. Little salty that I didn't get to it, but oh well. Moon Warden it is. So let's talk about the book that sent me into a reading slump. Yeah, I'm looking at you if this gets out. This is by Sophie Gonzalez and Cale Dietrich. I have read one book by each of these people. I preferred the Sophie Gonzalez. This book was bad. Okay? It was not good. And here's the thing. This was mismarketed. My expectations going into this were wrong for what this is. So let me talk about it. If This Gets Out is about two boy band members who fall in love behind the scenes and are kind of forced to reckon with what that means for their careers, for their label, and deal with being in the public eye, but also being controlled by management and how their decisions are not their own, really. But let me read you some of the blurbs on here. Equal parts edgy and adorable, this bright, joyful book has everything I look for in a queer YA romance. Let me tell you, I don't trust you anymore, Phil Stamper. There were also a lot of Goodreads things that said like happy, joyful, swoony boy band romance. And so this is marketed as like a YA boy band romance. When I think of YA boy band romance, I think music videos. I think, bopping around, having a great time, singing your music and like partying. But like behind, like swoony means dreamy, right? Means happy. There was next to nothing happy about this book. Vino, can you not crinkle? One of the main characters, Ruben, he is gay, but has been closeted by management. They've known he's gay and they've kept it from the public. And then Zach is his friend in the band, and Zach is not gay. And Ruben has had a crush on Zach, but he knows it's just like dumb whatever. Okay, and then you've got Angel and John, the other members of the band. When I say this romance hinged on miscommunication and purposefully like not talking about it, the most frustrating thing, there was 100 pages of this where if they had just said to each other, hey, I still want to be your friend, there would have been no conflict. So what happens is Zach gets drunk, he and Ruben are kind of like flirting, and then Zach kisses him. They spend the night in bed together, just sleeping. And then in the morning, it's like super awkward and they say the wrong things. And then like they have this interview and Zach like says this like kind of douchey thing because he's internally panicking. And then Ruben like, okay, so that's the romance. And then like, they eventually talk about it and they get together. And it's just disaster after disaster. This boy band is so controlled. There is another blurb that says it deftly explores the dark side of fame and the giddy thrill of first and forbidden love. Okay, yeah, it definitely talks about the dark side of fame. This is Dr. Luke versus Kesha, One Direction conspiracy theories levels of dark. Okay, it was not pleasant to read. No one is supporting these boys and they like fear their fans, and it just was overall such a downer. Like, why would I want to read this where as a fan of boy bands you feel bad about being a fan? None of these boys felt like they even wanted to do this or they wanted to be in this band, and we didn't get any of the before. We didn't get any of like why they loved it in the first place. We just get all the shit. It was gnarly, okay? And then I'm gonna go full spoilers right now. So I'm gonna put spoilers on the screen. You have one character who like doesn't want to be sexy and is uncomfortable showing off his body, and the management is like making him put on these sexy clothes and do these sexy dance moves. And then you have another character who like wants to be the sexy one, and he's forced to be like purity, but he's also taking drugs backstage and like throwing wild parties. And you know, then you have these two boys who are falling in love, and then they're just like, they're so stupid. Ruben's mom is constantly bombarding him with texts about like, oh, that blemish on your face, you should do this. Like, oh, this article says you were flat on that one note, and this is how to not be flat and like be better. She's like not supportive. She's just constantly badgering him about being better. And then Zach has this coming out moment with his mom where he like misconstrued, like it just goes poorly for no reason, because then when he gets back to her and they talk about it, it's all fine, but it's like miscommunications galore. And then the character who's on drugs has like it's really a heavy-handed moment in the story where he's like, we gotta get out, we gotta escape the hotel, like they're trying to kill us. And it's like, yeah, we get it, they're trying to kill your individuality and your spirit because management is awful, blah blah blah. Which like, yes, the music industry is horrific. The contracts that they get young people to sign, the way that they are like, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen or that it shouldn't be explored, but the way this was marketed as a cute romance, that's not what it is. And then the character on drugs gets hit by a car. He gets hit by a car in front of a group of fans and all his bandmates. I was listening to this on audio and I was just like, what just happened? It was insanity. So if you want an insane, dark, like kind of romance, like this is the book for you. And then in the end, they have to go into like legal battles because they finally get to come out on stage, and then the management company is going to sue them for defamation because they said like, oh, so-and-so management wouldn't let us come out and blah, blah, blah. It's just dark after dark after dark. All right, and spoilers. Okay, so if you stayed for the spoiler rant, you know that this is going to get a low rating. It would have been a 1-star, but I will admit that the speech in the end about the moment in the end with the fans and the big speech, it got me, okay? I teared up a little bit. It was beautifully written. The heart of the story was revealed in that moment, the only real moment with heart. So it got 2 stars. I gave this 2 stars. I don't give low ratings. I gave this 2 stars. Big yikes. And this was for research for my time travel boy band book. And let me tell you, this taught me what not to do. One more thing about this book. An interesting discussion can be had on like the way people review things, because it does have a lot of 1-star, 2-star reviews that just say One Direction fan fiction. Like it's just bad fanfic, just fan fiction. And all the single star reviews just brought up that it was fan fiction. If it is, and the authors have said that it's not, and that's fine, I believe them. Even if this were fan fiction, that is not what makes it bad. That's not what makes it not good. That is what, like, I just was reading through 1-star reviews to see, because there are a lot of 5-star reviews, and I don't understand. I don't understand that people were like, such a cute romance, totally sweet, loved it. I was like, wait, did we read the same book? Are we talking about the same book? So I went looking at the lower reviews and they were all like, it's fan fiction. Okay, and why did you dislike it? Tell me what offended you besides it being 2 boys in a boy band falling in love. That doesn't make it fan fiction. There were other boy bands in the world besides One Direction. So the prompt that I fulfilled by reading this was spells and incantations, and the prompt was to read a book between 389 and 415 pages, and this is 400 pages on the dot. So it fits for that prompt. Then I read Self-Made Boys by Anna Marie McElmore. This is a Great Gatsby retelling. It's part of the classics like remixed series. It was wonderful. I think it was a really thoughtful and interesting remix of the Great Gatsby story. You have Nick, who has just moved to New York. He is a trans boy and he is Latinx, and Daisy is his cousin, which means she is also Latinx, but in this, she is trying to pass as a white woman. So it's got all of this interesting stuff about class and race that is explored more than the trans experience. There is a space made for like queer people, and we get to see those like speakeasies for queer people that have always existed, and we get to see queer people exist back then and not really in fear, just kind of living their lives. But the way this explores race, and Tom Buchanan and then Gatsby is also a trans boy in love with Daisy, and it's just, is he in love with Daisy? You know, it was so thoughtful and so interesting, and such a good way to use a classic story and twist it. Like, that is what I'm looking for in these remixes, is taking the story that we know and making it say something different by changing little things, right? Because the story of The Great Gatsby is still about wealth and power and that disparity and like the American dream. But then you make Nick and Gatsby trans boys, and you can tell the same story, but now it says something else. So interesting, so good, highly recommend. This was 5 stars. Self-Made Boys fulfills the prompt for Elemental Studies, which is flowers on the cover. I read Playing the Palace by Paul Rudnick. I listened to this on audio for my Casey McQuiston video because I wanted some comps that I had actually read. It is a romance between a normal like New Yorker and a British prince. It very heavily leans on the comedy part of rom-com. The shenanigans, it's very over the top, it's campy. The voice in particular is kind of funny and quirky, and I can see, when we talk about voice, I can see how this book got picked up because the voice was very strong and it characterized our narrator really well. But there was some also like gross out comedy as part of that, and while the relationship was cute and made sense and the big moments were cute, it wasn't my favorite. It was fine. I gave it 4 stars. Maybe I would give Playing the Palace like a 3.5 rounded up to 4, because 4 feels a little generous. You know, I try to be kind of like, oh, I can see why people like this. But if this gets out, I was just like, no, I don't see why people like this. Now, for Playing the Palace, I can see why people like this. I liked it. I can also see why someone wouldn't like it. It is quite surface level. There's not a lot going on in the story besides the romance. So if you're looking for depth of characterization and like personal growth, it's sort of there, but not really. And Playing the Palace is going to count for the match your clothes to the cover of the book. I was wearing a lot of pink this month. And then another book that kind of slumped me was Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder by Joanne Fluke. This is a cozy mystery. It's an older cozy mystery. I listened to it on audio and it just wasn't anything special. The main character is like a red-haired firecracker. And this is actually one of the few cozies where the main character is actually asked to help investigate. There were just several moments where I didn't like the character. I didn't want to be in her head. I didn't care about the investigation. She was kind of judgy about like her sister's parenting. And then she was kind of judgy about a fat character, and it just like, I didn't have a great time. It was okay. I don't plan to continue in the series, and it's a bit dated. It came out in the early 2000s, I want to say, and the characters still had like home phones, and they needed to like go home and answer the phone, and while I wouldn't hold that against it alone, because like the Stephanie Plum books have the same thing, those are also older, but I didn't love the characters in this. So I gave this 3 stars. I won't be continuing with this cozy mystery series. There are a lot of other ones that are newer that I have enjoyed more that I can explore. And I chose Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder to fulfill the animal studies prompt, which was just flip a coin. One is nonfiction, one is fiction. I got fiction when I flipped my coin in the April TBR. This is fiction, so it counts. Now, the book that I was reading physically at the same time I was reading or listening to Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder was also not my jam. And so the two of those combined, my physical read and my audiobook not being like not exciting me, really made the slump worse. You know, I had one or two books that I liked, but it was a lot of not enjoying books for a while. The book I was reading physically was The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This I read for a vlog, and that vlog might be up sometime this month. I don't know yet. I forced myself through this, and it's not because it wasn't interesting. This is beautifully written. It's a Pulitzer Prize winner. But what is this book about? It's about the Underground Railroad. This is about Cora, a slave who escapes from the plantation where she was born and raised and worked and abused. And she, this imagines the Underground Railroad as an actual railroad that you find, that people help you along underground. And it's been kind of compared to Gulliver's Travels in that Cora goes to these places where one bad thing is happening, and then she goes to another place where a different bad thing is happening. What I'm looking for in my books in the past year or several years is escapism, is joy and happiness and lightness. And while I liked Cora as a character, I was rooting for her. How can you not when you read about, you know, the trauma that was inflicted on people? But it doesn't make for a great reading experience when you're just looking for happy light escapism. And I knew going into this that this is literary fiction. This is a heavy topic. I don't know. I thought I would like it more because I like literary fiction. I like well-written, beautifully told stories, and this is beautifully told, but I just couldn't get on board. One of the things that is really well done when you are dealing with heavy topics like slavery, like abuse of an entire race of people, there is not a tendency, but some stories can kind of revel in that abuse. It's like writing for titillation. They're writing these horrible things to like revel in the horribleness, and this doesn't do that. It does not revel in the awfulness and the horrible things happening. It really just states them as facts. This is what happened. So and so talked back to the boss, so he got whipped. And it does describe the abuse and the pain and the physical awfulness, but it does not linger there. It does not overdo it. This is definitely a good book. It is a well-written book. And I can see that as a writer, that this is fantastic and interesting and well told. But as a reader who just wanted to enjoy a book, I shouldn't have read this month. I should have stopped when I knew it was going to be rough. I did listen to this on audio partially, and the audiobook was fantastic. I still gave this 4 stars because I recognize that it is a good book, but my enjoyment was just not there. This met the prompt for Conjuration, which was recommended by a friend, and this was recommended by a coworker, and so I feel bad that like I didn't enjoy it more. Like I understand how it's good, but it just hurt too much. If you watched my try chapter, you know that I read I Love You So Mochi by Sarah Kuhn. This was my, cleanse from all the darkness and bad feelings of the Underground Railroad. This is the sweetest, cutest, fluffiest little YA romance that you can find. This girl, Kimmy, goes to Japan during her spring break. It's a very sudden trip. Her grandparents, who she's estranged from, invite her to come visit, and she goes to get her inspiration. Her mom wants her to be a painter, and she likes painting, but her real passion is making clothes, and they make her feel happy, and her mom kind of says, oh, that's just a hobby, and she really thinks, oh, it's just a hobby, it's just something I do for fun. And she meets a boy who helps her figure out like what she wants to do with her life if she's not going to do painting. It was just so sweet. They visit a couple different Japanese tourist spots, and so I feel like it was just a really wonderful escapist fantasy. And I liked the characters. It was sweet. It was exactly what I needed. So I did give this 4 stars, And you might be like, Megan, you're talking about it like it was so wonderful. Why didn't you give it 5? Well, I didn't give it 5 because everyone treated fashion like it wasn't a viable career. Being an artist is hard. Breaking into that industry is hard. Why would being an artist be any more difficult than becoming a fashion designer, or any less difficult, I should say, than becoming a fashion designer? Like, I just didn't understand the disconnect there. But her journey was cute, and I liked the way, you know, she connected with her grandparents and got to learn about the culture she's from. And this didn't fulfill any prompts for the magical readathon. Next, I read Feel the Burn by Andrew Shaver. This is a cozy mystery about Bernie Sanders. This girl becomes an intern at Bernie Sanders' campaign, and there is a weekend where he is going to Vermont to be the like grandmaster of this tiny little festival in her hometown. So she is assigned to go with him and like kind of be his keeper, make sure he goes to all the events, blah, blah, blah. And then a murder happens. This book was so tongue-in-cheek, funny, ridiculous. This author writes a lot of parody books, and this was no different. It was an enjoyable cozy. It says it could be the first in a series, and I think I would read another one of these. It was just fun. It was just a fun, good time. And Bernie Sanders was like acting like the detective, but also our main character was like helping out. And there was a lot of maple syrup. Like they're talking about the syrup industry and like big syrup coming into Vermont to change the maple game. It was just ridiculous, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I gave this 4 stars, and if you watched my TBR video, you know that I picked this out of a bunch of books. I just closed my eyes and pointed, and this is what I landed on, and that was to fulfill the restoration prompt. Next, I listened to Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardust on audio, and this was really enjoyable. I hate to compare an author's works, but I'm gonna compare it. So I don't think this was as good as Girls Made of Snow and Glass. However, do I think that because I'm more familiar with the fairy tale that Girls Made of Snow and Glass is based on? It's possible. So this is based on Persian folk tales and myths and Iranian folklore. So it's not as well known, and so I don't get if the author was like changing a lot of things or like making statements by changing the story, as we talked about with The Great Gatsby, because I don't know the original story. I still really liked it. This is about a girl who is poisonous to the touch. She cannot touch anyone. She is filled with poison. She's an outcast even though she's a princess, and she really wants to figure out a way to fix this curse. And there's this race of monster fae creatures called Deeves, and one gets captured. So main character Soraya goes to try to talk to this Deeve and figure out how to fix her curse. And the story, I don't want to give a bunch away because there were quite a few twists and turns in this that I kind of saw coming, but not really. And I think it's better to go in knowing less. But that is Soraya's goal, is to get this curse removed and be able to live a normal life and take her place in her family. Her brother is getting married, and that is maybe the catalyst to this because she feels left out. I really liked it. A discussion is like, what makes a monster? Are you a princess? Are you a monster? What is monstrous? What makes a monster? I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. I gave it 4 stars. This fits for the astronomy prompt, which is 2 letter E's in the title. So Serpent has 2 E's. We're good there. And the last book I read, I technically finished in May, but I'm still counting it for April, was Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Not gonna lie, I had really low expectations going into this. I saw people saying it wasn't very good, saw it getting low ratings on Goodreads, other booktubers were not liking it, calling it juvenile, and I really enjoyed it. I think that it was exactly the escapist YA, not silly, but like it was just the YA that I wanted, you know? So this is about a girl who can see death. Death follows her wherever she goes. She cannot die, but she can see death personified. She's orphaned as a baby and then moves from house to house to house, and she's finally settled at a house Oh, she can also see ghosts. So she settled at this place called Thorn Grove. We're getting very gothic, mystical vibes. The lady of the house died recently. Our main character, Signa, can see her ghost, and it turns out the woman was murdered, and she wants Signa to solve her murder. The lady's daughter, Blythe, is currently sick with the same illness. So the idea is like she is also being poisoned. It was gothic. It was a little spooky. It was a little sexy. It was dark. There was poison. She's eating belladonna so she can talk to death, and death kind of helps her solve this murder mystery. Like, okay, it's a little off the walls, but I think the world building was good. I think the character arc was good. So our main character goes from wanting to be a proper young lady and have a normal life to embracing the special powers she has, because it's, you know, we get more reveals as time goes on and she has some power. It was so good. I was not expecting that. I've already pre-ordered the sequel because it sat in that space of like, it's a murder mystery, but it's also a gothic romance, but it's also YA. The combination of that gothic romance and murder mystery just did it for me. Absolutely. And there are some beautiful scenes in this that are definitely going to stick with me. There's a moment where she is following death through these like shadowy realms, and these spirits are like floating around him as like orbs, and the way it was described was just so captivating. It was so beautiful, and there were some reveals that caught me by surprise. The only drawback that I really found was the main character's like obsession with polite society and the emphasis on being proper and being polite. And I think it was supposed to be giving like historical vibes, but it was a little too much, just a little. That was my only hang up though. So I gave this 4 stars. I might call it like a 4.5. It doesn't feel quite 5-star-ish, but yeah, she's a solid 4. And I'm not counting this for any prompts for the Magical Readathon because I technically finished it in May. So those were the 9 books that I read in April. It was a low month, but we're on an upward trajectory. So if you like this video, you can click that like button, you could subscribe, but really, you can do whatever you want. And I'll see you next time.